Hey everybody, welcome to day 10 of Video a Day Debruary here on the Debsterism channel on YouTube. Thanks for your participation and your support. Today's guest is Rita Louise, PhD. Rita has written 5 books, and I was reading this. The woman is just fascinating. She's written 5 books on a very interesting variety of topics, including why we get sick, from energy perspective, energy healing techniques, ghosts and the paranormal, as well as 2 books on ancient mysteries. But today we're having her here to talk about her newest book, which is about love and narcissism. So in her intro, she says, love shouldn't hurt. Yet for so many women, painful relationships are what they involve themselves in again and again, especially when they get involved with narcissists. And people, of course, aren't looking for people at the bottom of the barrel, but we all have stories about how similar the guys are that we have dated, the relationships that we've been in, the things that they have in common, and they usually aren't very good things. So her newest book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist, digs deep into this issue. It takes an in-depth look at the dynamics between the loving and compassionate and often selfless empaths and those wanting to take from them, which are the narcissists that are all about themselves. Regardless of what happened to you when you were young, Dr. Rita feels that you have the power to redefine yourself and your life, that it's possible to break free of the destructive and negative patterns and finally experience the loving, healthy relationship that you have always desired. Perfect for Self-Love Debruary. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Rita Louise to Video a Day Debruary 2021.
Yay, happy February!
Well, that caught me off guard. It's so good to have you here, Dr. Rita.
When I saw your promotion coming out about this event, I was like, oh, I want to be there. I want to be there. So I'm just so glad that you picked me and that I'm going to get to spend some time with you and your listeners because I think it's an excellent event.
Oh, and we are just happy that you're here to help make it even better.
Yay.
So let's start with all these questions I have for you.
Okay.
In the early part of the book, when you were talking about sharing your own experience, you had like this aha moment where you realized that the majority of your intimate relationships were abusive. And, I'm not doing work on your level, but, I've been doing this advice stuff for a while. And I think just from my personal experience that's the story for most women that they've experienced some kind of abuse in their relationship. But for the sake of this interview, please share with us what constitutes an quote abusive relationship.
Sure. So, and I'm actually going to make it a little bit easier, because
Okay.
when you're in a relationship, the idea is that you're happy. And there are a lot of people that are in relationships that they're not happy, so they might not be happy because there's physical violence in the relationship or emotional or verbal abuse that's going on. I've heard of situations, this has not been my situation, where there's financial abuse happening, where they control all of the money. So if you want to go buy yourself a dress, you can't because they won't give you the money or they won't give you access to the money. Or if you do get the money, they shame you for it and make you feel bad about it. And so there are a lot of reasons, and so to me, the bottom line is, what do you need to do to be happy in the relationship? And if you're not happy, then why are you there? And the second part to that is, if you keep getting into relationships where you end up not being happy, if there is physical or emotional abuse, or you can start looking for these patterns that you're experiencing, because usually they all fall out and end for the same reason. Always.
That's interesting. Mine always end because I want to run them over with my car. I'm serious though. I have stories. Well, let's
I'm
talk about,
sure, but there's your feeling toward them, but then there's what's going on inside of you that's making you feel that way. What's that little phrase inside, or that feeling inside, that either you allow them to let you get to that place, or you're attracting people that make you get to that place.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
had to think about that, but yeah, I'll think about that. But it hasn't been the case for a while. But when I was younger, man, I'm telling you, I was like, my car was in motion. Well, let's talk about what happens. You talk about family of origin and how even observing of domestic violence and abuse will impact a child. How can you kind of explain to those who haven't read your book yet? What kind of impact that watching violence or experiencing it, abuse as a child, will have on you as an adult.
So if you're a child and there's, abuse or neglect, because neglect falls into that same category, it's like you develop these internal beliefs about who you are. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I don't matter, I'm invisible. And that's what you think about yourself, and they're validated by your family of origin. And and then another piece, especially in families where that are toxic and really dysfunctional, is you never learn what right looks like. You don't learn what healthy looks like. So then you become an adult and you engage in these relationships, but you still feel worthless inside. You still feel, that you have to sacrifice everything yourself, because your job is to make the other person happy. Um, and you think that that's how it's supposed to be, because that's how it was, and that's how all of your relationships have been, because you don't really know what right looks like. And until you sit there and go, well, that's not right. For example, you know children that grow up in a household with physical abuse may come to the recognition that if you hit me, that's abuse and I'm out of here. And
Mhm.
then they'll put a strong boundary there and say, no, you hit me, I'm gone. But they aren't really aware, like, if you sit there and are invalidating or condescending or mean, that's also abuse, because that's not where your awareness is, that if you're mean to me all the time, that equals abuse. If I tell you this is what I need and it's really important to me, it might not be abuse, but maybe I shouldn't put up with it. And maybe I should make better decisions for myself to say, you know what, this isn't working for me and I'm going to go. But a lot of
Why is
times
it that
people
women have so
stay.
much trouble, though, not only setting boundaries, but maintaining them? Because many, even with their own children, will fall prey to the, well, come on, come on, come on, why not? Let's do it. You're just being this and that. And they get guilt tripped and kind of coerced into doing something that they really don't want to do.
Well, and I think, it falls into that same category. One of the reasons that people don't have boundaries, one, sometimes they're just not taught how to have boundaries and maintain boundaries. But a lot of times, like, people will give in because they want to be loved. They want to be accepted. They want to receive approval. So a parent that gives into a child many times will not want the child to reject them. Like my ex-husband, narcissist number two. Uh, I've been married too many times, so girl, I got stories. He would sit there and say, well, if you do this one more time, and finally I got to the point where it's like, okay, so this is like the fifth time, and you keep saying if you do it one more time. So when is this one magical one more time gonna be? But I recognized that he did it because he was afraid he had custody and she had the visitation, that his ex-wife would want to take the boys from him. And so he
Uh,
kowtowed to a bunch of crap, which I didn't put up with.
I see. So there's fear there.
There's
So
fear.
the people pleasing aspect of this is all about getting love and being accepted and fear of losing the relationship.
In many situations, correct. And you brought up people pleasing, from the empathic side, because a narcissist isn't pleasing anybody but themselves, period.
True.
You know, and and people ask me, it's like, well, I have this friend that's a narcissist, and they gain something from the book. And I'm like, well, one, it wasn't written for a narcissist because they'd never read it. And if they did read it, they would just point at all of their friends that they thought were narcissists because it really didn't have anything to do with them because they were perfect. Bang. So,
What can
but
you say?
no, but people that tend to be on the receiving end, who I identify as the empaths, because they're much more sensitive to what's going on around them, have a tendency to become people pleasers, and
Really?
then,
I was going to ask you about that, about, the opposites attractive. Narcissists and empaths are attracted to each other, or is that more what we're calling empaths are actually codependents?
well, I think it depends on how much, and I'm going to say damage is there, because
Mm,
you can have a person who's an empath, but they can be whole, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. He called them an altruistic empath, where they're able to hold their space and have boundaries and but still be sensitive and use discrimination in how they use their energy. That's a pretty finite group.
okay.
When you're talking about empaths. One of the things that I believe is that people become more sensitive to the energy around them because they are in the toxic household. They're running around with their antenna up going, okay, is it safe? Well, what kind of mood is mom in? Well, what kind of mood is dad in? What's the dynamics in the house? And how do I need to be in relationship to what's going on? And so they have years of honing that sensitivity to what's going on around them. So, and I found that very interesting. And so you can be a healed empath or you can be a dysfunctional empath, and thus being a people pleaser, and then taking it the next step of dysfunction, a codependent.
Oh boy. Well, I want to let the listeners know. Someone's just saying, giving you a big compliment, saying, "Wow, I could listen to her for hours."
This is just one little topic that we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Well, they're fascinated, and we will be taking a few questions later, ladies. I have to ask her my questions first, and then we'll take some questions from the viewing audience. How would we know if we are an empath or a codependent? Are there some, traits that we can go by?
I saw somebody post something on Facebook today. Actually, I think it was today, asking that question.
Oh, really?
To me, if you're a codependent, you're already empathic. Because you're always second guessing and kind of trying to read the mind of the people that you're with, so that you're anticipating what they want and what they need. And usually you get pretty good at it. Um, but you're not addressing it in a healthy way. There's a need and a fear that you're going to be rejected. So if I don't do this, then they're going to reject me,
I see.
or abandon me or not like me. So it kind of takes that people pleasing mentality to the next step. It's something I've been working on. New material. I finished that book and I'm like, man, I already need to like revise it, expand it, because I have like way more material. But I've been looking at, and I'd like to share this with the listeners, a little promotional thing, a series on healing trauma. And it talks about the stress response, and it talks about emotional regulation, because if you are a person who's experienced a lot of trauma and maybe have PTSD or CPTSD, it's like your emotions can just go all over the place. Some little thing happens, someone looks at you a little funky, and you're ready to run them over with your car. And so I've been sending out articles every other week talking about different topics. And so if they sign up for the newsletter, in the newsletter, it has a listing of all the previous articles plus the new one every week if they want to catch up. And so, but one of the things that I uncovered, so I think everyone's familiar with the fight or flight response, where we either beat somebody up or we run away, and then there's another one called the freeze response where we just stop, the deer in the headlights kind of thing.
Right.
But there's a new one that has kind of been getting some traction, which is called the fawn response. And it's not a biochemical response, but it's a learned response. And it happens especially in children from toxic households, that very early on, they learn that it's not in their best interest to comply. So if I don't do what they tell me, there's going to be some kind of consequence. They're going to withhold their love, they're going to abandon me, or there might be punishment. And so there are some researchers that are conjecturing that that whole people-pleasing codependent attitude actually gets developed like as we're learning to walk, like that early in our personality.
That's terrible. So the kid's like, you don't even have a chance.
No. And you learn that you don't really have a choice, that this is what you need to do. And so there's this whole programming of, looking at who you are and looking at these core beliefs that you carry around. And obviously some of them are so old and ingrained in who you are that changing them is like, I didn't even know that I was doing that.
So are narcissists formed in early childhood like the codependents and the empaths
Yes,
are?
So narcissists, so there are ways that people deal with things, not with the stress response, but people pleasing is one. And then there's another one that's called entitlement. And they basically expect to get stuff. And so people that become narcissists, and I'm going to use your example because I think it's a perfect one. It's those little kids that are like, but mom, but mom, but mom, but mom. And there's never any boundaries and they get what they want. And so there's a mental, emotional aspect, but I think for your basic narcissists that run around in the world, it's like no one ever tells them no. And they don't learn how to process the no. And they learn early on in life that there's no hope. What separates like on a really deep emotional level, the empath and the narcissist is that something happens to the empath and they can always kind of come back and find that light at the end of the tunnel. It's kind of like, okay, I'm back. Let's go on to the next thing. And the narcissist, it's like they lose hope. And so they develop other coping strategies in order to get their way and have their will be accomplished. I mean, it's really kind of sad.
It is. And it's, and it's that behavior is wreaking havoc in relationships. And so many women end up with narcissists, we don't even have to end up with them. Let me take that back. We just run into them just on the street, online, and then we keep everywhere.
Them. And then we keep them. That's the part that I was like, holy crap, that's true. And a friend of mine brought this point to the forefront, which I have to definitely give credence to. So again, if you don't know what right looks like, you're going to try to recreate what you know and what feels comfortable for you. So you could have, I'll say, two people pleasers that get into a relationship together. So at first they're like totally taking care of each other and it's really great. But then they start getting back into their old patterns and one might become more narcissistic in the relationship while the other one becomes more of a people pleaser in the relationship because they're used to this imbalance in their relationships. And it's like you teach the person, you teach each other, this is what I expect from you. And so you could have two very lovely people get together, but because of their early wounding, it can create this dynamic so that by the time you're done with the relationship, you think that they are a narcissist, when the reality is that there were communication issues. You never kept, it just became really out of balance, and there wasn't enough skills to recognize the relationship was out of balance and what you needed to do to bring it back into balance, that you could both be those people pleasers together with each other and have it be really good.
Well, let's talk about recognizing something. I wanted to ask you, in your professional opinion, what to define what a narcissist is first. As I know it's a term we throw around a lot, but I don't think everybody's really clear. And then how can we recognize when someone that we're, just getting involved with has narcissistic tendencies so we can flee?
And that could be a little bit challenging, but we'll get there. So a narcissist is someone who thinks that the world revolves around them, and they really don't do anything wrong. And they're just perfect people, and I think most people will recognize what's considered an extroverted narcissist. And they're the ones that bang their hands on their chest, and they were the football quarterback star in high school. And, they got big energy and they can be the drama queen. And, all they want to do is talk about themselves. And, and I think most people can recognize that type of character, but there's also what's called a covert narcissist, and they tend to be self-deprecating. They tend to be quieter. They tend to play the victim a lot, but both of them, so when you meet a narcissist, it's like they have a life cycle. I swear to God. When I was doing the research for this book, because I was started doing it for my own healing to understand what I'd been doing my whole life and not do that again. And I'm reading stuff and I'm like, holy crap, he used to do that all the time. And there's a word for it. It's really interesting. And so basically narcissists go through three phases. They go through the initiation phase, the devaluation phase, and the discard phase. And this is what, part of the, what do you do if you meet a narcissist? How can you tell? And it's a little bit hard because narcissists, upon first meeting them, do what's called love bombing. And they are all about you and they want to talk to you on the phone all the time. And they want to go out with you all the time. You are the best thing. You think you met your soulmate because you've just connected on this really deep level. They kind of push to move the relationship forward pretty quickly. And so if you have your own and you have this time and all of this energy that you have desired, that you have needed. Sorry, there's notes coming up on the screen. And, and so that can be the tricky part. But once the relationship starts moving forward, and it could be a few months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, this persona of this really great guy starts to fall apart and change. And I'll give an example. So I was dating husband number 2, the one I talked about before, and we were living together and we did the dishes together, did a bunch of stuff together, got along, I thought, really good, and so then I bought a house. We weren't married yet. I bought a house for him and his kids for us to live in. And then everything changed. And it was like, he didn't clean anymore. He didn't do anything. And, he totally changed because now he was safe. Now he didn't have to sit there and try to keep me enticed. in this relationship anymore, and his true self came forward.
Oh, so he thought because you bought the house that you were stuck there, you're trapped now?
I was trapped. I just bought a house that I couldn't afford for by myself. I
Oh,
wouldn't have bought the house if, he wasn't going to live there. You know what I mean? It was
right.
just, and if it had been like 5 years down the road, maybe, but this was like within 6 months, everything fell apart.
Wow. He couldn't even hold back for 6 months?
No, no.
Okay, so I'm hearing, watch out for if he comes on too hard, strong, too fast. He seems too perfect. Uh, he moves the relationship along too quickly.
And
Okay,
one of the key things is making sure you're getting your needs met. So I didn't even date this guy. I said, well, maybe we can meet at Starbucks for a cup of coffee. I mean, I had met him at a conference, and he lived close and he looked interesting. So I'm like, well, maybe we can meet for a cup of coffee, and he was like, oh, well, that foo-foo coffee and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, he couldn't even be nice about just meeting a freaking Starbucks, you know, it was like, you're gone, because a lot of times it's like we don't listen to ourselves. We don't pay attention to those red flags that are being presented to us, and we just keep going. And with a narcissist, saying no and keeping your own counsel instead of being that people pleaser that says, oh, well, okay, whatever you want to do. It's like, no, you need to do what you want to do, because if they're not going to be in agreement to doing something with you, like if there isn't that exchange happening, then that's a huge red flag. But a
so
lot of
how can
times,
we show ourselves? I mean, how can we demonstrate self love in a situation like that? Because you're getting our needs met, but is there anything else?
um, well, I mean,
'Cause
I
I think
think, go
some
ahead.
women don't know how to vocalize their needs.
That's been something I've been working on. That has been my worst thing. And all I can say to those women is it's a belief that was instilled in you when you were a young child, that what you had to say didn't have any value, or if you said something, there would be some punishment tied to it. There was always something negative tied to expressing your thoughts, your needs, your opinions. And the only way I can say is, sometimes you have to put your big girl panties on and do it. I mean, I know I've gotten better, but when I first really started working on that, I mean, I can remember days where it's like, okay, I need to make this communication. And then I would sit down in a chair and I would literally be white knuckling the arms of the chair and like almost hyperventilating and saying, I need to tell you something. And then, I probably should have wrote it down on a piece of paper, because then my mind would go blank. And it's like, then I'd come back and, and, and so loving yourself and honoring yourself, especially if you don't have any practice, can be a little bit challenging,
Mm.
but making those communications is loving yourself. Having a relationship end is loving yourself. Going to the gym because you don't want to hang around and watch a football game is loving yourself.
I see. Okay. So, ladies, yeah, there's a lot of them, over the course of this month, this has come up again and again, how many women struggle with carving out space for themselves and identifying their needs and then communicating them clearly. There's a lot of hesitancy and just like you said, a lot of I mean, I didn't think of it that way, but that's probably what's at the core of it. They just feel like they wouldn't be listened to anyway, so why bother?
Well, and I think women come to the table really at a disadvantage because they are programmed with it's your responsibility to have babies and raise the family and keep the house and keep the peace, and do these things. And
What's happened here? That froze for a minute there. Are you back?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay, because the screen froze for a second.
Yeah,
It's
you
like, oh
froze a
no.
couple of times. It's like, yeah, I just keep talking.
Well, tell us what is a typical relationship with a narcissist like in the middle. Okay, so they're uh they come on strong in the beginning, or they come on in a self-deprecating manner. I'm trying to think if I know anybody who's done that. But is there any similarity
Well,
between the two in the relationship?
I mean, well, they can still come on strong, but be kind of self-deprecating. They come off as being maybe humble.
Oh, that. Okay.
That, yeah, but the humbleness is a self-deprecating, victimy, I can't do this, because I'm pitiful kind of thing. Yeah. And and they get a lot of women to come to take care of them
Yeah,
because
see,
they're
no.
pitiful. Anyway, but in the middle, so that love bombing period can be wonderful, especially if you have self-esteem issues. It's like, man, they are into me. Cool. And it feels really good. But it also creates hormonal imbalances inside of you. It really increases your dopamine levels from what you're used to. And then you start moving into the devaluation period. So like my one husband, once he felt safe, because now I'm in this, oh, I bought the house, but I was also in school full time.
Oh boy.
So, and I was taking my business from being, I was doing my business. I mean, I do psychic readings and medical intuition work. And so I had moved to Texas. I mean, there was a lot of transition going on in my life, and I was going to school full time. And now I just bought this house. You know what I mean? So it was like,
That's a
yeah.
lot.
And well, no, it got to be even more when he started getting laid off from jobs. And then I got to support everybody. Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, um, but when it moves into that next phase, it's like, they start blaming you. They start not really caring what you want or what you think or what you feel, because they just want to do what they want to do. They can start invalidating you, um, depending on where they're at, because they just want to do what they want to do. So let me just
Right.
start from there. So as an example, if they like doing yard work, they'll do yard work. But if they don't like doing yard work, they won't touch it. And so they just are going to do what they want to do. So like husband number two again, I got so many examples from him. Apparently he didn't like doing yard work. And so the grass in the backyard would be, so I had a toy poodle, and where I drew the line was the dog went in the yard to pee. So she was only maybe that tall. And if I couldn't see her in the grass had to get mowed. But I mean, think about how long the grass is. And it wasn't a big yard, but he didn't want to do it. So it didn't get done. So it didn't matter how much I pitched a fit and had conniptions about the yard not getting done. He would just make excuses about why it can't get done and how he's so busy playing text twist that it can't get done. And blame it, you know what I mean? And it's just like, and so, then they blame you for everything, and it just becomes really bad, you know.
Okay.
And then they can start doing, because everything is about a manipulation. So they don't want to do it. So now they make you feel guilty because you're trying to get them to do something, and then they can start gaslighting you where they start making you feel like you're crazy. Like, oh, there's a hole in the screen that didn't used to be there before. Well, how did that get there? There's only you and me in the house. How did that get there? I don't know.
The whole fairies came and did it.
Well, I think I said that. It's just like, okay. And then they'll change the topic, So it's like, so I want to talk to you about the hole in the screen. And the next thing you know, they're talking to you about, well, how come you didn't do the dishes?
Right.
So you never really resolve the freaking hole in the screen that they're not going to fix, obviously. Uh,
Oh, this sounds so exhausting. So
it
how, okay, if
is.
a woman, you say that you've been through this, once, twice, but why some women keep, they find the same kind of relationships 4, 5, 10 times. What is going on that they keep being drawn to this type of man?
Well, I think there's a couple of different things. I mean, are you familiar with the concept of like law of attraction?
Yes.
And I'm not going to get into like whole big law of attraction thing, but I like to kind of throw it out there. So we emit energy about ourselves that we broadcast into the universe. So if the energy that I'm sending out there in my relationship space is, well, I'll take anything that's breathing, then anything will show up. And that could be the dregs, because I don't really have any qualifiers around this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And if you have self-esteem issues, then you're happy that they're breathing, and you're going to open the door and let them in and let them stay, because you have your issues that have not been resolved. There's a woman who does a lot of work about codependency on YouTube named Lisa Romano. And one of her comments was, and I will never forget this, she said, many codependents and people pleasers will invite toxic people into their lives, and the big difference between someone that's healed versus someone that's not is they might come into the life of someone that's healed, but they don't stay very long. So I think people that have good boundaries, and have a good inner self, and understand what right looks like, will sit there and just stop the relationship dead in its tracks, if it even gets that far. And I also believe that people that are empathic, more sensitive, people pleasers, they emit a light, and people are attracted. It's kind of like, flies to a light. It's kind of like if you have a lot of light coming out of you. I mean, obviously not physical light, but, just
Spiritual.
energy,
Right.
spiritual light. It's like it's going to attract every crappy fly and mosquito.
Oh, not the
Because
mosquito.
I know, but because what they're looking for is somebody who's going to take care of them, and put up with them, and so, the more dysfunctional the empath is, the more the narcissist can take, because the people pleasers, their job or their mentality is, I want to give, 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 give. So the more people pleasing / codependent you are in that giving, will mean that the narcissist, you're like a smorgasbord. If you're a really dysfunctional codependent, you are the prime rib smorgasbord shrimp appetizer for a really terrible narcissist, because you're going to give and they are more than happy to take it from you.
Oh, that's just terrible.
It is terrible.
So would boosting our self-esteem help with this problem?
Very much so. Very much so. But to do that, it really, in my opinion, requires that we look at ourselves, look at our history, look at that pattern of what we keep doing over and over and over again, and change it. I mean, I know in my own personal journey, um, there have been a lot of times that I didn't really know what right looked like.
You mean in a certain situations?
Yeah, like, okay, so this happened, and it's like, so should I be mad? And the response I would get back was, well, are you? It's like, well, yeah, kind of. Well, then be mad. Because my pattern, I mean, I don't have an issue disclosing my pattern, was somebody would do something, and hurt me. And then I would kind of get over it, but then I would invite them right back in, and then they would just hurt me again. Because that was my pattern growing up is, I have a lot of brothers and sisters, how brothers and sisters are, you're always fighting. And,
Hmm.
and so in order to have any kind of a relationship with them, you have to forgive them and get on with it. And so that pattern of getting hurt or abused or whatever went with me into my adult relationships. And so being able to sit there, and now when I have friendships or relationships, it's like, okay, well, they kind of blew me off, this time, or they did this thing that hurt me. So now I have to, instead of just wasting some time and re-engaging with that person, I either need to have a conversation with that person, I need to move them out of my life. I mean, I need to look at what's going on from a more conscious level and make different choices about it.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to tell to people who are talking about your book. The book is linked in the show description below. So just expand the show description box and you will see a link to purchase the book that we're discussing in the interview today. We'll start taking questions. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. Please make the @ sign with my name so it highlights my name and I know that you have a question and I can relay it to Dr. Rita. What would you say, in your esteemed opinion, are 3 to 5 things that women can do to start themselves on a journey to healing and increasing the love that they show themselves?
Okay. So, one of the things that I have found very valuable, and I think a lot of people find very valuable, is really paying attention to what's going on inside. I like calling it our inner world, because, especially if there's been trauma in your life, we get stuck in these patterns of negative thoughts, and that inner critic that's telling us, it's like, you're fat, you're stupid, you can't do that. What do you mean? And, I feel like one of the very first steps is start paying attention to what's going on up there, because it controls a lot, So there's that inner critic, which is one piece, and then there's something that's called rumination, where we think about what's happened to us. So let's say you and I get into some, well, you try to run me over with your car, and, and I'm just sitting there, so I get away and now I'm like thinking about like what happened between me and you, and, how can I fix it? And I am so much better. I used to be the rumination queen.
Really?
Oh my God. Queen. I could go on for like weeks at a time thinking about the same crap over and over again. So that's one aspect. And then so I was a ruminator, very good at it. And there are people that worry all the time. Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? But that's also a negative cycle of thought, so we have 3 very negative cycles of thought that we tend to get caught in. And so going and starting to pay attention to, am I trapped in the past? Am I stuck in the future? Or am I just criticizing myself constantly? Or I could be in the future and criticize myself. I mean, that inner critic can go, it can go anywhere. But by paying attention to it, then you can start to change it, and I mean, because most of us aren't even aware that we do it. I mean, we do it, but there's no awareness. And so just by becoming more aware, and I just keep using myself as an example, but I think, it works. So Miss Ruminator, so something would happen. And so this again has been part of my healing. And so it would be, I would ruminate about something for a couple of weeks, and then I kind of get over it. And then I would re-engage with the toxic person. Okay, not good pattern. And so I have learned that when I start ruminating, it means, oh, see, this is the right, what right looks like. Oh, there's something that's bothering me. That was like, ooh, that's pretty good insight. And so now, and so sometimes it would take me 2 or 3 days to go and make the communication and make a different choice, whatever. But with that awareness, I've taken it down to like maybe an hour, which
That's
is,
really good. From
you
weeks
know,
to down to an hour.
yeah, and sometimes not even that long, you know, and that's my experience, but I think, everyone has their journey and what's going on with them, and being able to understand what's happening inside can make you have different choices. Oh, I want to go back to the narcissist thing for a
Oh,
second.
yes, please.
Okay, so one of the other things that they do, so when they're in that devaluation stage, so usually that's if there's going to be some kind of abuse, physical, emotional. I'm going to throw neglect in there because they'll sometimes do the silent treatment where they like don't
Mhm.
talk to you, or they take off for a few days or whatever and they don't communicate. That all falls into that devaluation stage. But tied to it is where they come back on the back end and they play all lovey-dovey. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. We can go to counseling. Ooh, I'll never do it
You're
again.
right.
Wah, wah, wah. But it gets the empath, people pleaser, codependent to forgive them because they have the hope or maybe the need that what they're saying is true and that they're going to change. But if it's a narcissist, they're not. They're just saying it to keep you tied into the relationship and give you false hope because all they do is lie.
Yep.
So,
Yep. I don't know. I mean, I've known some narcissists in my life, but I just, I don't have the time. I just can't. I just
mhm.
don't want to be bothered. And it's like if I can't depend on you and you just have one time, you have one time to not come through, one time to lie, one time to do something that you told me you weren't going to do, one time to break my trust. You got one shot. That's it. And once you do that one thing, we're deuces. I'm out.
But see, you probably came from a fairly healthy family background. Either that or you've done a lot of work.
I think it was just I was just born a little jerk. That's what to hear my relatives say it. That was what it is. I just came out like this, just a little jerk, and was like this from day one. But
but you have very clear boundaries.
yeah,
And people that stay in relationship with narcissists, they don't have boundaries, or they're not very clear, or well, if you do it again, well, if you do it again, well, if you do it again. I mean, it is kind of like, and the line keeps moving, and you know, because they're afraid of losing the person, losing the love, being rejected, being abandoned, feeling broken again.
yeah. That's why we wanted to do this month, and have all you great people here to kind of help them, get some traction in that direction, because it just seems like hundreds and hundreds of ladies come through here every week, and a lot of them are really struggling with that.
Hmm.
So, want to try to figure out a way to give them some hints and some clues and guidance to turn that around.
And
What's
it can take a lot to say you have one chance. The inner conviction to say I'm not doing this anymore. So
yeah.
I have a new rule because of my pattern of forgiving everybody all the time, no matter how many times they screw me over. And you get two chances. The first chance you go to purgatory. You're in the timeout box, and I will give you a chance to redeem yourself. You get one chance. And then if you don't, then we're done.
Yep.
Or I move you out, if it's just a acquaintance person, I move you out and move on.
I'm in full agreement of that. Well, I'm one question I want to ask every guest before they leave us is to share their definition of what self-love means. It's been very interesting to hear everybody's perspective.
So self-love has not been my best thing. So that's really been a big part of my personal journey. And for me, it's really been about honoring myself, listening to what I need. I mean, I really kind of suck at it still. Uh, and
Hey, life is a journey. Everybody's on it.
mhm. Well, it has been brought to my attention that there's Dr. Rita, who like has written 6 books and does all of these things and is, like, ah! And then there's Rita, who, has this little inner journey that needs to happen. So, so for me, self-love has really been about trying. See, I don't even know that I got an answer.
Well, I mean, you have some kind of conceptual view of it, even
Hmm.
if it's something that may not have down pat perfect in your own existence, but I think you kind of have a concept.
Hmm. But it's just about making yourself happy and doing the things that are going to make you happy because no one else is going to do it. And so living an existence where you're not happy, I mean, we all have moments where we're not happy,
Right.
but if the unhappy, and especially if you're in a relationship, ladies, listen, if you're in a relationship and you spend more time unhappy than you spend happy, then you need to stop and really seriously consider whether you want to stay there or not. I mean, I think that really needs to be the bottom line. Like, if you're not sure if you should stay or you should go, most women, if they're in a really unhappy relationship, find that they are much happier being alone and dealing with the loneliness than to dealing with being in a relationship that they're not happy in.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And at least that's the way I would think, but I don't know if everybody agrees with us, Rita.
Like I said, when you're doing some of this stuff, it really takes a lot of courage, and so just taking that step, it is a self-loving thing. Ending a relationship that's not healthy is a self-loving thing, you
Well,
know.
you got a question here.
Okay.
How do you go through the process of forgiveness with a narcissist when you have real, I guess that's losses from the situation? In my case, I've lost custody of my two daughters through his
Mm.
lies in court. Ooh,
That's when you run them over with the car.
yes. You see? 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 That's what I'm talking about. Put Honda
So,
in motion.
and that one's even more challenging. I mean, I think so. I mean, there are so one gentleman that I was with who was definitely a narcissist, but he had other issues going on. I just felt very sorry for him. And so even though he was kind of psycho, he was a beautiful soul and then psycho. And I don't know. Anyway, um, it wasn't really hard for me to forgive him, even though I knew I couldn't have him be in my life anymore. But like back to number two, I don't even want to like talk to him because he used me to death. And my feeling is it's more important for me to forgive myself and forgive me for allowing myself for being in that relationship and being in that relationship for so long,
Mm,
which I felt was more important than forgiving him.
gotcha.
I don't know
No,
that I've
that's a good
totally
point.
forgiven him.
Okay. And as a, case raw, it might matter too, like how old the children are. I mean, if they're old enough to take a bus or Uber or something and come and see you versus being tiny, um, You know what I mean? There's
Hmm.
the different approach to it. I would think she didn't say their ages. That's all she said. What I
Well,
wrote you.
and there are some narcissists, and I'm going to use the word narcissist, but are really actually psychopaths. People that are psychopaths have very strong narcissistic tendencies. My the way I emotionally like to separate them is that a narcissist does it, but there's not intention behind it. They're just self-serving. Period. It's like, well, I don't feel like mowing the lawn. So there's not a vindictiveness to who they are and what they're doing. Where someone that's a psychopath, they'll just do it because, they want to get revenge, or they want vengeance, or they want to make a point, and there's a really an intentionality. And my feeling is someone who is withholding children might be actually more of a psychopath than just a straight narcissist, but they both are cluster B personality disorders, and with narcissism being a very common trait between the two of them. But to me, to make it easy to explain, that's kind of for me, the separation between a pure narcissist and someone who is just really not a nice person at all.
So did you ladies catch that? What she said the difference is? Okay, the kids are 15 and 9. 9 is small, but 15s can get around.
Mm-hmm.
She was very clear that the difference between just a straight narc is they're not necessarily trying to uh, intentionally harm you. They just don't want to do whatever it is you're talking about. They just want to do what they want to do. Versus the other one wants to do things with the intent to harm you, to get vengeance, to do something to get you back. So it's different. Just in case they didn't catch that.
Yeah, so using that example, the narcissist might not want to be bothered getting in the car and driving the kids to the meeting place, because they're just, lazy or procrastinator. I mean, because that's how they'll come off, as being lazy and procrastinating. Because if I don't want to do something, I'm going to procrastinate it for the rest of my natural born life. It's a fact.
Dang,
Unless
Rita, the rest of their natural born life, though.
Well, unless you stick your head firmly up their butt and make them go do it. And then they think you're the controlling person.
Mm.
And because you have to like be like, you need to go mow the lawn. I can't see the dog anymore. It's just beyond, too long. But now I'm the mean one because I made a demand and I'm making them do it. Because it would have, hell.
Unbelievable.
Well, see, the
Unbelievable.
more unbelievable part, because there's always humor. So we split up. I moved into a townhouse, and which had these really nice grounds. So I would take the dog for a walk, and she wouldn't pee or poop on the grass. She had to go in the monkey grass, which is, grass that's about that tall that they use for borders, and pee and poop in that. And I'm like,
That's
so
what she was used to, poor
that's what she
puppy.
got trained to. And I'm like, oh my God, that just makes the story be that much more about the damn grass.
Oh my goodness. Poor dog had PTSD. Oh my
Pretty
goodness.
much.
That's pretty funny. I know we're making jokes, but I know the poor puppy was probably traumatized. Well, let's wrap this up, Rita. Before you leave us, do you have any closing comments? And then after that, I want to give you time to share where they can find you and get more information on the offerings that you talked about earlier.
I think just two things. I think one thing is, if you find yourself constantly getting into these relationships, that healing is possible, and through your inner healing, you can start meeting people who are not as dysfunctional. Or if you meet them, you're just like, no, gotta go. See ya. And move on quicker and not get stuck and trapped in a pattern. But to me, the biggest thing is taking responsibility. Two people come to the table and looking at your role and what you're bringing to the table or not bringing to the table, that maybe needs your attention and your mindful awareness to change.
Gotcha. All right. So where can they find you and some information about what you got going on?
Okay, so I have like too many websites too. Too many husbands, too many websites. So so my primary website that kind of gets you to all of my little things is soulhealer.com. 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 You know, they keep
Love
telling me
it.
that I should say like soul train, but I can't do it.
No,
Uh,
no. I think that's trademarked, so you can't
Well,
do
no,
that.
no, no, not Soul Train, but like do it with you, like Soul Train, you know, like do the how they would do the TV show, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do it anyway. And I'd like to reiterate, you know, I'm doing that healing trauma series that's going on right now. I think one actually, and it's going out tomorrow. So if you act quick, um, tomorrow's article, which will not be in that list, but it is on my webpage, is what does a narcissist mean when he says, I love you? That's my Valentine's special article. So
Ooh.
that is available on
Ooh.
soulhealer.com right now. Sign up for the newsletter and you'll get, because I'm on this whole big, you know, relationship thing, you know, why do people stay in relationships? You know, what does it feel like to be, are you happy in your relationship or comfortable? Ooh.
Ooh.
You know, some really deep topics
Ooh, I'm
that are
loving
coming
it.
out, you know, over the next week. So I would encourage anyone, you know, especially if you are interested in learning more about yourself and your relationships, to sign up.
This is
Soulhealer.com.
great. Great stuff. Thank you, Dr.
Well,
Rita.
thank you for having me.
Oh, this was great. Thanks, and my moderator put your website in the chat. Thanks, good job, Shay. And we will definitely add it as well in the show description if I haven't already. But if not, then I will definitely put it there as well.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Rita, thank you so much.
Thanks for
You are the
having
best.
me.
Okay, talk to you soon.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye.
Okay, you guys, that was Dr. Rita. Oh my God, that was just the best. Can you believe it? I think we have some wonderful guests this year. I don't know how I'm going to top it for next year. I'll do my best, but I don't know. I think you guys might be disappointed with anything after this year because these people have been coming through here have just been freaking awesome. Awesome. So please go by her website, soulhealer.com, and sign up for the newsletter to get those articles that she discussed. Also, in her book, you have your little notebooks, right? You guys have your notebooks out, so you're going to write this down. This is something that you're going to do. I want you to have a homework from every video. On this one, you're going to take a lesson from Dr. Rita's book. And the question I was going to ask her is, what happens to a young person who endures long-term abuse while growing up? But we kind of hopped around. But anyway, in that, as she framed everything here, you see a lot of what happens to you, the attitudes that you have about yourself, how you handle relationships, the types of men that you choose, your response to those men. These things start in childhood. So what I want you to do is a little homework. Even if you're in therapy, this is still good for you to do. Your homework is to think about your childhood experiences and ask yourself these questions. How did I get here? Where you are right here, right now, today. Think about all the stuff that happened, what was said to you, what was done, and you write it down. Okay, because you're gonna need this map to see where things like went left for you. Okay. Then what factors were involved? Was it things that people said? Was there violence in your home? Did something traumatic happen to you personally? Something traumatic happen that you witnessed? Be very specific, okay? Writing all this down. And the final point is, how have the things that I've gone through in early childhood affected me as an adult? Okay, these things came from Dr. Rita's book. And it's just something I pulled out that I thought would be a good homework session for you who are listening to the show tonight. Okay. Like I said, her book is available. Please use the link in the show description below so that our channel gets credit for the sale on Amazon. Like I said, it's not like grand theft money, but every penny helps. Okay. And we have another upload on deck for tomorrow. And then let's see, what is tomorrow's show? Hold on a second. Let me not lie. Tomorrow is uh, oh, Dr. Tamika Richardson talking about mindset matters. She's really good. I hunted her down. I looked everywhere to find that woman. So I'm really happy that she was able to participate. And then on Friday night, bring your $5, or you can send it in by a Cash App and do the super chat, whatever you want to do. $5 live stream relationship advice show. Okay. So that bring your little quick question and you'll get a quick answer right on the spot. That's it for tonight, lovely people. I'm glad you were able to show up. Oh, Jay, I couldn't do it without you. This is definitely a mutual admiration society. That girl got my back like there is like no tomorrow. This would not happen without her. Because I can't do both. I can't keep track of y'all and do the show and the guests at the I just can't do it. So she's got that. I got the guests. Good job for both of us. Okay, so I will see you guys on Friday night. All right. Until then, be good. Do your homework. See you then.